When was the last time you felt great? When was the last time you woke up and you felt refreshed and had the focus that you needed to go into the day? You see, so many of us are living in stress. And even though we know that stress is a part of life, it doesn't have to control our life. And many of us are living in a way where that stress is keeping us from living our best life. Today, we're going to be talking about how to learn from stress, how we can stay authentic to ourselves and also find the harmony between it so that we can show up and be our own personal superwoman. So, we're going to be talking with Dr. Gala Gorman, who is going to be our stress expert, and she's going to help you go from just thinking about living free to actually learning how to embrace living stress free. So, stay tuned. This is Women Winning Their Way. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Women Winning Their Way. I am so excited today. We're going to have a powerful conversation all about stress. I mean, I know none of us ever experienced this, but should you, you might want to tune in and take some notes. And so, what I want to do is I want to introduce our guest. So, today we have Dr. Gala Gorman. So, Gala, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Clara. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Yes, this is going to be a powerful conversation. But before we get started, why don't you go ahead and just briefly introduce yourself to us?
So, I'm Dr. Gala Gorman. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, naturopath, and author. My most recent book is What's Your Kryptonite? The subtitle is Manage the Toxic Stressors Threatening Your Superwoman Status. So, that could give you a little clue about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So, let's start diving in. We talk about stress, and honestly, stress can be a good thing when it's productive in what we do. But unfortunately, so many of us are living in the mode that is not being healthy to us. And I remember looking and doing some research on you, and you had on your website something like 90% of illnesses are related to stress. And I would love to just kick it off and say, sort of, what has been your story? What brought you into wanting to learn about stress management and how you can help people, really learn to operate at a higher level and more sane level?
So most of what we teach was born by necessity, right? Because we had to figure it out ourselves first, right?
Mhm.
So I describe myself as the earliest victim of midlife crisis. I got my I'm a CPA in my former life, and actually technically am still a CPA. I will never give
Mhm.
up my CPA license.
Yeah.
So the good thing about that for you and your audience is that everything has to be practical. If it
Yes.
doesn't make sense, if it's like impractical, like, yeah, I get it that would
Mhm.
be great, but there's just no way I'm going to be able to do something like that. Like,
Yeah.
I everything goes through my practicality filter, and it has to add up and make sense. So I got my first job in an accounting firm a few days after I turned 16. And I had a 20-year career in accounting, including managing, getting my CPA license, then going on to manage like a mid-sized local accounting firm. And I was the poster child for stress, right? And honestly, I was incredibly stressed and had a whole lot I was managing, but I didn't have kids. And like, I can't even imagine the woman that's trying to manage a family and all of that on top of everything else we normally manage. So I was just absolutely fried, beyond burnt out. I was just crispy critter. And out of necessity, went to see an MD that kind of specialized in more alternative stuff, because I'm have been pretty much alternative all my life. And so he was an MD medical doctor that I like to describe it as gone rogue, meaning
Okay.
he doesn't like toe the party line. And so he practiced acupuncture and homeopathy. And his big thing was food sensitivities. He was an internal medicine doctor and dealt with that sort of thing, allergies, and so his formula was he would figure out kind of the main things I've found over the years that honestly, in the women that I work with, there's a handful of things. I call them the fierce five. There's a
Okay.
handful of things that just about everybody has a problem with. But
Mhm.
he said, eliminate these handful of things, juice every day. That was back then, juicing was a big thing. It's
Mhm.
not recommended as much these days, and there's some reasons why it's can be really hard on your system. But he said, eliminate these things, juice just about every day, and otherwise eat whatever you want. And so I went back to see him in 6 weeks, and I had lost 13 pounds. And I mean, I didn't the my trainer at the gym at the time, I was still going to the gym, and my trainer at the gym was to the point where he's like, "You really should not lose any more weight. Like, you've lost all the weight you need to lose." Fortunately,
Mhm.
our bodies are smart and tend to, as long as we're still providing nutrients, they tend to sort of stabilize. But I didn't need to lose any more weight. That was plenty. And I really wasn't trying to lose weight. That wasn't the goal. The goal was just
Mhm.
to feel better because I felt like doo doo. And so that was kind of my first introduction. I wouldn't have described it back then as toxic stress, but essentially, stress had become toxic, and I had to give my body a break from just like bombarding it with toxicity from every angle
Mhm.
so that healing could essentially be jump started. And that experience really was kind of the turning point for me. I had had a number of like other experiences leading up to that that really were conditioning me to
Mm.
look for alternative ways to solve these problems.
Yeah.
Um, but, that was my first experience with understanding that stress comes in a lot of different forms.
It
It's
really
not
does.
just what we think of as having a to-do list that's too long.
Mhm. Exactly. And it's so true. I think so many of us are just like, I'll just get through this. I'll just get through this and then I'll relax. And like you said, it doesn't manifest today. It manifests sometimes 2 years down the road or whatever. And it becomes again toxic inside of us. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, because the show is women winning their way. Well, many times for us on our road to success, it's pedal to the metal and we're
Yeah.
going out and we're stressing ourselves out. So, why, especially as professional women, do we need to start paying attention to this?
So, if I had anything to do over again, and I don't regret leaving the accounting profession. I was ready to do something different for kind of like my next career. And that was my story and what worked for me. But there's a lot of women who have really hard won their position and status, and they
Mhm.
maybe even really enjoy what they do. And whether it be just the work or the work and the benefits, right? And
Mhm.
so I want women to understand that they have to be their primary care person, PCP, right? I talk about that in the book. And if you're going to lead this really over the top, stressful, burning the candle at both ends life, then you have got to apply some of these other things I suggest
Mm.
to keep the toxicity manageable,
Yeah.
because
Well,
otherwise you will not be able to sustain it. Like
no.
the wheels will start falling off,
Yeah.
and
It's so true.
that tends to happen as we reach midlife, and women will have a really bumpy ride through menopause, and it often happens that women get to that point and maybe they've had a really successful career and now they feel like they're just not going to be able to keep up, right?
Mhm.
And the reason why we have a really bumpy ride through menopause is because we go into menopause with adrenal fatigue. If
Right.
you've got adrenal fatigue already, then the adrenals are normally what takes over for all the other, like, sort of fertility
Mhm.
organs, fertility oriented organs. And if you have adrenal fatigue already, then you're already on fumes and
Yeah.
there's nothing to donate. And so, so if you're listening to this and you're not already at that point, then it's a cautionary tale to
Mhm.
get things in order before you reach that point. But if you're
Definitely.
already there, then just know that the most important thing you can do is just start really peeling off some toxicity and giving
Mhm.
your body a break.
Yeah. One of the things I love about what you said is you didn't say just stop what you're doing. You acknowledge that there are some women out there who want to achieve these things, who are hard
Mhm.
workers. And I love and appreciate so much that you're acknowledging and you're still letting them do that, because so many people are like, well, just stop doing that. Just take more time off. Well, that's not how they're programmed. All you're saying is if you choose to be that type of person, you also need to choose to have some of these other things in place so that you can keep doing those things. So I really appreciate that. I would love to ask, because you hit on this thing of adrenal fatigue as an example. I think so many times these symptoms or signs are there, but they might be so minute that we're not paying attention to them. I can see it all the time where people are like, oh, you have fatigue. Well, who isn't tired? Or you hear these
Yeah.
things, and sometimes the symptoms, I think, go unrecognized because we think they're normal or nothing big. If you had to, because I know everyone's different, but if you had to boil it down, what would be maybe some of the signs that we need to start paying attention to?
So the most of the women that come to me, I won't say most, 1 in 3
Mhm.
has already had some form of thyroid dysfunction diagnosed.
Okay.
And that typically happens because they've got fatigue, they may have a really big problem trying to manage their weight. Like,
Mhm.
again, the wheels started falling off and they went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, "Oh, you have borderline thyroid problems. Let's just put you on medication." Okay, so
Mhm.
that is going to create more issues. But if that is not what's happened and you catch it before that point, then most likely the other thing that I find reported most often is some degree of insomnia. This is probably one of the biggest places I get pushback from women because, actually, this is not just women, this is everyone. The most important time for our bodies to sleep is 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., which means that if you're not wound down in bed by 10ish, you're not
Mm.
going to be in like really sound sleep by 11. And so if you're pushing it and you're not even going to sleep till midnight, right? Then you miss that whole window of time of like the most important sleep time. So when you find that your sleep is disturbed, that's like the first
Mm.
thing that you really cannot let go. And if you are trying to whack-a-mole that problem with melatonin or heaven forbid, like medication for sleep, I just finished a new video that'll be coming out soon, talking about melatonin because that's honestly at epidemic proportions being used inappropriately. And melatonin is a hormone. So, if you're using melatonin regularly for sleep, you're basically using hormone
Mm.
replacement therapy.
See, didn't
And
know that. Wow.
don't be surprised when your hormones are all whacked because basically you're interrupting this natural process that's a cascade. You can't insert one hormone without setting off a cascading, a domino effect of
Yeah.
everything else going out of balance. And
Yeah.
so the first thing, like if you do nothing else, I would have you avoid these toxic food oriented kind of things that most people have a problem with, and swap away. I definitely want you to feel like you can, still go to a restaurant, still have a glass of
Mhm.
wine, still, cheat here and there, but just, for the most part, avoid these really toxic things that tend to
Mhm.
create a problem and inflammation for a lot of people, and prioritize your sleep,
Yeah.
you know?
Do you know that less than 75% of people do not get enough sleep? I know for years that this was something I struggled with. I would fall into bed exhausted, only to then toss and turn all night long and wake up feeling unrested. Sleep is critical to our health, well being, and productivity. I am so excited to partner with Lisa Gibb and Somnvie, who have crafted the perfect night's sleep. We cannot walk around like sleep zombies the next day. Lisa and her team at Somnvie understand this. And with over 40 years of quality craftsmanship, Somnvie sheet sets are designed to create a perfect environment to offer you a restful night's sleep. They use the highest quality fabrics, and they have products that focus on temperature regulation. Ladies, you know what I mean about that. With their products that include mattress enhancers to sheet sets, lots of different kinds of unique pillows, comforters, blankets, and more. They literally have you covered and ready for a quality night's sleep. All the products with Somvie will wrap you in luxury each and every night. The people at Somvie are committed to one thing: a quality night's sleep. So connect with Lisa Gibb, your personal sleep consultant, and build your personal and luxury sleep package today. Connect with Lisa at www.lisagibb.somnvie.com. Invest in your rest with Somvie today. I have noticed that that was a huge one. I really credit my sleep to helping me work at my optimal level and stay healthier. I love to get up early. I'm usually up by 5 a.m., which also means I usually go to sleep at around 8:30 or 9.
Mhm.
And on the days that I don't, I definitely don't feel as energized. And one of the things that I changed dramatically is, you talk about you can still go out, you can still have a glass of wine. And I love a good glass of wine. I've noticed though, I struggled to wake up in the morning because it messes with my sleep patterns because
Mhm.
of all the sugar that's in it. So for me, I'll give myself a glass of wine maybe like on a Friday or a Saturday when I don't have to get up the next morning. But during what I call school nights for me, when I have
Yeah,
to work the next day, I just can't take the gamble because I don't sleep as well.
yeah,
And then I just don't feel the focus. And I have tried things like melatonin and it messes with me.
yeah,
And I'm a huge proponent of sleep as well. And I think that's the one thing, and not just women, but that we push to the side and we say, oh, I'll just catch up this weekend or I'm going on vacation. And I know too many people who are pushing the envelope on that and are not crawling into bed until
yeah,
11:30 and
yeah,
still getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
yeah.
So,
The interesting thing is, I know for myself, because this is something I've struggled with since my 20s, just again, because I was leading such a high stress life from a very early age. And what I have found with the alcohol, or honestly, what I call it is a cheater's diet,
mm,
right? Is that if you will stop eating earlier, okay? So if you're able to be done eating by at least 6 p.m., I learned this one in my very early 20s, from somebody who really was a proponent of this. It was essentially early time restricted eating that wasn't called early time restricted
exactly.
eating back then,
Mhm.
right? And so, have a glass of wine with dinner if you want it, but if you're done by 6, your body's got plenty of time to burn that off. The
Yeah.
second glass, you might have a problem even if you eat it that even if you have it that early, just because of as we age, there's more for our liver to have to
Mhm.
deal with. But in your particular situation, you were saying that you go to bed at 8:30 or 9, and there's a lot of women saying like there is just no way. Like I'm barely getting home and getting myself organized by
Mhm.
that point. So the important thing to recognize is that our bodies are hardwired to sleep from about 11 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Okay.
And so I thought I needed 9 hours of sleep just because like I was so toxic and my body was having such a difficult time managing it. But what I have found as I've improved things and I've figured this stuff out is that I don't need 9 hours of sleep. I need about 7 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Right. And as long as those 6 hours are between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., your body got what it needed. So that's 6 hours right there. So all you really need is another hour-ish either
I
way,
like
and
it.
you're good, you
There we
know?
go.
But yeah, the important thing though is to make sure that you can't sleep from 2 a.m. to 8 or 9 a.m. and get the same effect.
Okay.
If
All
you're
right.
not sleeping from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., you are trying to defy your body's natural tendencies, and
Yeah.
you really can't do that because you got the sun and the moon outside that are basically running the show.
I want to talk a little bit about and I kind of mentioned this tongue in cheek earlier, good stress. There have been times in my life where honestly I don't feel stressed out. However, I have a lot of things going on, and I noticed, maybe the insomnia. So example is right now. I have so many things going on. I am so excited though. Like I don't feel stressed out. I have the time that I need, so I'm not running behind on time. I'm eating healthy, I'm working out, I'm not depressed. Like I feel really good. At the same time, I am struggling with the sleep. So I know I must be under stress even though I don't feel it. So like is that I don't know if I'm making sense.
You are.
Okay.
So, that's sort of like your to-do list is too long syndrome,
Mhm.
right? So the way that we combat that is one to keep a notepad by the bed so that and when we wake up, um, if you wake up with something on your mind, because you don't want to wake up and turn the light on and all that stuff and you think, well, I'll remember it in the morning, but your mind knows that you're not going to remember it in the morning, and so your mind says, oh no, I got to keep reminding you this so that I can remember it in the morning. And so you just need to get up and jot it down, and you will be surprised how much that just eases your mind and you can
Mhm.
soothe back
Yeah.
into sleep.
I do
The other thing
that.
too,
Yay, I do that.
yeah. And at night when you're like sort of planning for tomorrow, create a nice, concise what you're focusing on tomorrow to kind of like close that open loop for today.
Mhm.
So we have this what's called open loops, where basically when we've got something where we know we've got something we've got to do tomorrow, then like our mind starts processing, thinking about what we need to do, all those things leading up to it.
Mhm.
And so if you create a really concise to-do list and prioritize things. So like one of the things that can be really helpful is to just have a dumping ground for all your ideas and all the things that you think about, and then your mind says, I know where that is. If I'm when I'm ready to go back to it, I know where to find it, right? And then you have a to-do list that really just has the things you know you're going to focus on
Mhm.
tomorrow. And that can help a lot. And then the other thing I will say is that use stress is what you're describing, right? You're excited about what you're doing and you're otherwise taking care of yourself. And maybe, you're waking up in the night or you're having a little bit of more trouble shutting down at night, like getting your mind to turn off. As long as that's temporary, you know, we go through phases in our lives where we've got to like be able to ride the waves. That's why we need to be taking care of ourselves to make sure we've got those extra resources when we need it, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't really worry too much about that. Again, if you're able to get that all important 11 to 1 time where you feel like you're sleeping solidly. A lot of us don't have a problem going to sleep, falling asleep. We have a problem staying asleep.
Yeah.
And what happens is our our body kind of gets through that really important 11 to 1 period of time, and then you will wake up sometime between 1 and 3. And so if you wake up between 1 and 3 and need to use a restroom or whatever, like, do that and then go back to sleep. And
Mhm.
honestly, if you're laying there tossing and turning and it's been a half an hour, I got two strategies for you.
Perfect.
One is take some magnesium, particularly ionic magnesium. What I find is that sometimes we're deficient in magnesium. And if you're getting leg cramps, that's a really clear sign that you're magnesium deficient. But you can take a little magnesium. If you use ionic magnesium, it's easier for your body to absorb. You can use the liquid even, or there's like a fizzy Alka-Seltzery looking thing called Calm that a lot of people like to
Yeah.
use. I don't like to use that honestly because I have to warm up water to dissolve it in, and it's a
Mhm.
whole production. I'd rather just have a little bit of magnesium, and I can do that, and typically within a half an hour I'm like, I can't remember going back to sleep because it
Oh,
happened pretty easily. Or if you really know you're not magnesium deficient, I never suggest that you take anything that's not addressing a known deficiency. So if you know you're already taking minerals, you know you're not mineral deficient, then I don't want you just, you know, creating more toxicity with stuff you don't need. You might need to just get up and process, journal,
mhm,
whatever. One of the things that the late Wayne Dyer said is when you wake up at 3 a.m. or so, he said, don't go back to sleep. He said that's like really powerful time, like
mhm.
ripe with great ideas, and easy access to your like subconscious super conscious mind.
Yeah.
So don't fight it if you're going through that period of time. Maybe you're just going through a really creative time,
Mhm.
and those creative juices are flowing,
Good.
and milk it.
Fantastic. Oh my God, this has been such a great conversation, and you are a wealth of knowledge. And I just appreciate so much of what you're sharing with us because it's very real. These are things that are applicable and they're things that we can do. I know that, you have written a book, you have an amazing website with so many, things that are offering to help other people that are out there. So tell us a little bit, what is Dr. Gala working on now?
So I am just relaunching my podcast. It's called Let's Talk Toxins. So that's kind of fun and a way to learn a little bit more about the kinds of things that show up as toxins that accumulate in our world.
Mhm.
I also have a little program called the Human Energy System Reboot, and it's just a 10-day process that gives you some like tools and assets, resources you need to just do like a 1 week reboot. And so that can be really helpful and is a super low cost way to dip your toe into my world. You can find that at drgala.com. That's drgala.com/links. So
Perfect. Excellent. And we're going to put all of your links, all of your contact information in the show notes. And I highly recommend everybody go to her website. I will tell you there's some great, just little tips and nuggets. You have a little assessment on there. So many wonderful things. So before I let you go, I have one last question for you. Sitting where you're sitting today, learning everything that you've learned so far, how do you define success for yourself now?
so for me, um I have lived a few years and have been around the block a few times. And so for me, I want to feel like I've got the freedom to do what I want and have sort of some control that I can exercise in my
Mhm.
life. And, that's one of the things we talked about, women who have had some achievement and reached a level of success. And with that level of success comes freedoms, right?
Mhm.
And so if anytime I'm considering something new, it has to run through that filter. Like, does it sound fun? Am I still going to be able to maintain my sense of control over my schedule and my life? And I sometimes have a wrestling match doing that, but it's definitely the filter that everything has to pass through.
Perfect. Well, Dr. Gala, thank you so much for spending time with us today and for sharing all of these. Stress is part of life. However, we don't need it to run our life. And like you said, we want to make sure that we are being purposeful and taking care of ourselves because we want to be here and we want to be strong and as focused as we can. So thank you for everything that you're doing and just really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, Clara.
All right, everyone. Well, let's go ahead and let's bring this down and let's go through some of these moments of clarity. I really took away so much from that because as an overachiever myself, again, I can tend to push myself and sometimes again not pay attention to some of the signs and remembering that it's okay to want more. It's okay to work hard. Just make sure again that you are listening and taking care. One of the things that she said that I loved most was again to be your own PCP, your primary care person. Listen to yourself. Pay attention. Again, your body knows what is right for you and knows what it needs. And sometimes it's screaming at us. So pay attention to these things. And if you notice some of the signs, the insomnia, the not sleeping, the fatigue, the gut issues, if you notice things are not right, listen to them. Don't ignore them because you want to make sure, again, that you are taking care of yourself. Stress becomes toxic, and we want to make sure that we are living our best life, our whole life, and working on those. Again, be practical. Know what's going to work and what isn't going to work for you, and make sure that, again, you're doing things that are going to be practical for you. She said, I love some of these things that, if you are waking up, maybe you need some magnesium. I've had a lot of people talking about that to me. So, looking at that. But I also love the idea of maybe it's time to get up. Maybe you have something creative that you need to work on. But making sure, sleep is so critical to us. So just remember, don't put a band aid on everything by just going to the drugstore or taking the latest thing that's out there that you're hearing. Go and talk to someone who is a professional. Ask for help. Learn what's working and what isn't working. Maybe even keep a journal because you might notice that certain days you're feeling better than others. I think a lot of us women started doing these things when we were younger and, getting our periods and stuff for the first time. We learned our hormones. Well, many of us are going into that next challenge. So, again, journaling because you might see some just normal patterns that you're going through. So remember, you deserve to be here, to live your life, to live it on your terms. And let's make sure that we are living in a life that is not going to be killing us and not going to be toxic to us. So I hope you took away a lot of value. Please make sure to not only like this episode, but you know what? Let's all share it. Let's all agree together to share this episode with at least 5 other women that we know, because all of us know women that are burning the candles at both ends. And let's be a friend to each other and let's make sure we're looking out for one another. Again, our sisterhood is so important to our longevity and our own mental wellness. So thank you for watching. Come back next time for another episode of Women Winning Their Way.